25 years ago when Frank Zappa released Freak Out, I don't think people had the foresight to regard him then as a future icon of popular culture, but that's exactly what he's become.
Isn't that funny, the way life treats you? I mean, here's a guy who is an icon, and yet he spent his whole life pouring all his energy into being an iconoclast. I like Frank. I mean, musically, lyrically, he should run for president. And, I mean, seriously, he should.
Yeah, I know. He'd probably win.
Well, I'd vote for him. Not a question.
And when it comes to business, Frank's no slouch either. From the man who named his children Moon Unit, Dweezil, I couldn't remember.
And Diva.
Well, they're weird names.
They are very weird.
Right. Because the latest in showbiz savvy, Frank Zappa is bootlegging his own bootleg music.
Now there's an angle.
It's an angle. Yes, and the real reason we're here today, Frank Zappa beat the boots. I remember reading here the only real answer to bootlegging is to use tactical nuclear weapons, but short of that, bootlegging the boots is the only humane solution.
Yeah, you try and be nice about these things, but...
Okay, what's the story behind it? You just finally reached the limit in patience in terms of what was happening?
No, I finally just figured out a way to go about dealing with the problem. It just seemed that with Rhino's cooperation, that it would be possible to put this package together and take their stuff and steal it back from them and sell it cheaper. See, I hate bootlegs, but there are people who love them and who collect them and who are bootleg mavens. And we went to a bootleg maven and said, if you're going to put out something like that, what would be the best that you could stick in the box? And this was the Maven's personal selection. I have never even listened to this album. I've got nothing to do with this album except saying, let's do it.
You said rock and roll was only for people who were cute at one point. Do you think rock and roll is still for people who are simply cute?
It's more for people who are cute now than it ever was before, because it's virtually impossible to get a record contract if you look, anywhere between normal and ugly. You may play great and sing great, but if you're not cute, you can't get a contract now because it's the world of videos. It's easier to get a contract now if you can't sing and you can't play, but you look good, because they can always hire somebody to sing your song for you. You've seen that happening over and over and over again. Every hit that you hear on the record, on the radio, who's really singing it? Who's doing it? Because the person that you see in the video is dancing and looking good with nice clothes and everything, and it's all fake. One of the things that I do in my daily news bath, which has been stunted today because this is prime news time for me, but I'm doing this interview instead of watching the news. But usually I watch the Christian Science Monitor News, which has stories that nobody else runs. It's a really very good news program. And last week, on the 75th anniversary of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they gave this little discussion of how this piece of paper, dating from the end of World War I, still affects the way things are done in the Middle East today. Remember the movie Lawrence of Arabia?
Of course.
Okay, Lawrence gets out there and says to the Arabs, okay, follow me, and we're going to go and have a war with the Turks. We'll, beat up the Turks, and then you'll have freedom. Nice idea. Well, what happened was, while Lawrence is leading these guys to fight the Turks, two bureaucrats, Mr. Sykes and Mr. Picot, a French and British, these two bureaucrat guys, made an agreement, not a treaty, that the French and the British would divide up the Ottoman Empire. The Arabs got screwed. And even though the Sykes-Picot Agreement is not something that people in the United States think about very often, the people in the Middle East think about it a lot, because they can trace the source of all of their anger toward the West back to the day that these two guys got together and just said, okay, we're now going to slice up this territory. Oh, here, you want to see some facts? Can you hand me that little book there?
This one here?
Yeah. Could you imagine that it would ever be such a thing as this book? Do you have any idea what's in this book?
U.S. Cavalry, world's finest military and adventure equipment. Ah, that's it. Killing is such an adventure.
Look at this costume here. Just the mind boggles. Let's get dressed. We're going out tonight, dear. And when we arrive, what an entrance. I try to get young people to vote. And I would say that I registered 11,000 of them during the tour in 1988, and I've spoken about it, and I've put notices about it on albums and stuff like that, but I couldn't, in all honesty, claim that I've had a major positive result in raising any kind of political consciousness in this country, because people who buy rock and roll records want to party, and they don't want to think about boring stuff. There's no question about it. Hell in a handbasket.
Frank, you've given up hope.
The Sykes-Picot arrangement, whatever it was.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's really depressing. If you stop and think about trying to get people to pay attention to what the government is doing or actually taking some personal involvement in it, it's hopeless, because even if you got them to register, they don't know enough about what's going on to make a decision after they've registered. So maybe it's for the best if they don't register.
So how do they become more informed? I mean, they become a news addict like you? And
Well,
that news is so skewed anyway.
Well, I'm watching the same skewed news that's available to everybody else. I don't have any kind of secret information that comes filtering into my house. But what I've learned to do over the years is subtract the spin. And so if you flip from channel to channel and see the different ways a story is covered, you can average it out and get some idea of what's going on. And then the fact that certain stories are reported at all is very suspicious. And you learn to spot these, why are they talking about this now?
Will you ever tour again?
I hope not. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I like to sit in a chair and just thumb through my U.S. cavalry, think of the adventures that I could have had if I had had enough money to buy these knives.
You've given that thing more promo than beat the boots.
If you really want to beat the boots, use one of these.